In the deepest vaults of Mount Doom, where shadow and flame dance eternal, there was forged a weapon more terrible than any sword, more destructive than any army. A simple band of gold, unremarkable to the untrained eye, yet within its humble curves lay powers that could break kingdoms and corrupt the purest of hearts. The One Ring whispers still in the darkness of memory, calling to those who would seek dominion over all living things. We know the tales of its invisibility, how it cloaked Bilbo in the goblin tunnels and carried Frodo through the fires of war. But invisibility was merely the surface of a deeper, more sinister well of power. Within that golden circle lay 10 dark gifts, each more corrupting than the last, each designed to ensnare the bearer in webs of shadow and desire. These were not mere magical tricks, but instruments of domination crafted by the Dark Lord himself, extensions of his will made manifest in the world of the living. Tonight, we descend into the abyss of these forbidden powers. We shall walk the shadowed path that leads from the halls of the innocent to the throne rooms of tyrants, and discover why even the wisest among the free peoples dared not claim this treasure for their own. For in understanding the ring's true nature, we glimpse not only the mind of Sauron, but the very foundations upon which evil builds its empire. Long ago, when the world was younger and the elves still wrought wonders in the hidden places of Middle-earth, there came a shadow out of the void. Sauron, the deceiver, the lord of gifts, walked among the smiths of Ostin-Edel, wearing a fair form and speaking words of wisdom. Yet in the secret fires of Mount Doom, far from prying eyes, he labored upon his masterwork, a ring that would be master of all others. Into this golden band, Sauron poured not merely his craft, but his very essence, his malice, his will to dominate, his hunger for absolute control. All of this he bound into the metal itself, creating not just a tool of power, but an extension of his own dark spirit. The inscription that burned upon its surface was no mere enchantment, but a binding spell that proclaimed his dominion over all the rings of power. One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. This was the ring's first and greatest purpose, to serve as the master key to every other ring forged by elven smiths, to make their wearers mere puppets dancing to Sauron's will. But the Dark Lord's ambition reached far beyond the rings alone. He sought to make all of Middle-earth his domain, every king his vassal, every free will bent to his design. The One Ring was to be the instrument of this cosmic tyranny, and within its seemingly simple form lay powers that could reshape the very foundations of the world. The wise understood this truth and trembled, for they knew that the ring was not merely Sauron's weapon. It was Sauron himself, given form and substance, waiting to reclaim its full power and complete the enslavement of all living things. Yet of all the ring's powers, none was more immediately seductive than its gift of invisibility. How simple it seemed. Slip the band upon your finger and vanish from mortal sight. Walk unseen through enemy lines. Escape the notice of guards and kings alike. Bilbo discovered this power in the depths of the misty mountains, using it to outwit goblins and claim his freedom. Frodo wielded it to escape the Black Riders and traverse the wastes of Mordor itself. To many, this seemed like the greatest blessing imaginable, the power to move through the world unnoticed and unhindered. But invisibility, as the wise knew, was not freedom. It was the first step toward damnation. When a mortal donned the ring, they did not simply become hidden from view. They passed partially into the Wraith world, that shadow realm that exists alongside our own, where the spirits of the dead wander and the servants of darkness hold dominion. In this realm, the bearer became visible to creatures of shadow. The Nazgul could see them clearly, Sauron's eye could pierce their concealment, and gradually, inevitably, they began to fade from the world of the living. Gollum, who possessed the ring for centuries, became a wraith-like creature himself, neither fully alive nor completely dead, sustained by the ring's power, but slowly consumed by it. The 9 kings of men, who wore the rings of power corrupted by the One, faded entirely into shadow, becoming the dreaded ring wraiths, immortal slaves bound forever to their master's will. Even Bilbo, after decades of light use, began to feel the ring's corruption, growing thin and stretched as if his very substance was being slowly drained away. For invisibility was never the ring's gift to its bearer. It was Sauron's trap, designed to draw the user deeper into his realm of influence, to make them dependent upon its power, while gradually stealing away their humanity. Each time the ring was worn, the barrier between the living world and the shadow realm grew thinner, until finally, there would be no return at all. But if invisibility was the ring's most obvious snare, then the domination of wills was its most insidious. The One Ring was forged as an instrument of mastery, designed to bend other minds to the bearer's desires, just as Sauron himself could sway the hearts of men with his voice and presence. This power ran deeper than mere persuasion. It was the ability to reach into another's soul and remake their very thoughts and loyalty. So we glimpse this terrible gift in the effect the ring had upon all who encountered it. Boromir, noble and brave, found his mind twisted toward thoughts of conquest and glory. Faramir, though he resisted, felt the pull of the ring's promise that he could save Gondor through its power. Even Sam, most loyal of friends, was momentarily tempted by visions of transforming all of Mordor into a garden under his command. The ring whispered to each according to their nature, promising to fulfill their deepest desires while slowly bending those desires toward domination and control. In the hands of a more powerful bearer, this influence would have been catastrophic. Gandalf feared that he would use the ring from a desire to do good, but that good would become tyranny, his wisdom transformed into an iron will that would crush all opposition. Galadriel saw herself as a queen, beautiful and terrible, ruling Middle-earth with a benevolent but absolute authority that would suffer no dissent. The ring offered them the power to command not just armies, but hearts and minds themselves, to become beloved dictators whose subjects would worship them even as their freedom died. This was Sauron's own greatest power made manifest, the ability to corrupt good intentions into evil actions, to transform heroes into tyrants who believed themselves righteous even as they crushed everything they once sought to protect. And like a disease, this corruption would spread, for those dominated by the ring would themselves become agents of domination, spreading the shadow of their master's will throughout the world. The ring did not merely grant new abilities, it amplified what already existed within its bearer, taking their natural gifts and magnifying them to terrifying proportions. For the great and powerful, this represented the ultimate temptation, for it promised to make them godlike in their ability. Eyes capable of reshaping Middle-earth according to their vision, Gandalf possessed wisdom and power that had been gathered across ages. With the ring, he would have become a being of such might that none could stand against him. His knowledge would have become prophecy, his suggestions commands that could not be disobeyed. The barriers between thought and reality would have crumbled before his enhanced will, allowing him to remake the world as easily as a gardener tends his plants. For Galadriel, already mighty among the Eldar, the ring would have restored the glory of the Elder Days and more. Her realm would have expanded beyond Lothlorien to encompass all of Middle-earth. Her sight would have pierced every shadow, and her voice would have commanded the very elements themselves. She would have become a goddess in truth, beautiful beyond measure, and terrible beyond imagination. But power amplified is also corruption magnified. The greater the bearer's natural gifts, the greater would be their fall into darkness. A wise ruler would become a tyrant convinced of their own righteousness. A protector would become a destroyer who eliminates all potential threats. A teacher would become an indoctrinator who allows no dissent from their truth. The ring fed upon strength, transforming it into domination, nobility into pride, love into possessiveness. It was designed to appeal most strongly to those who could do the most good with power, precisely because their corruption would create the most evil. For Sauron understood that the greatest darkness comes not from those who choose evil, but from those who choose good and then twist it into something monstrous. Among the ring's most seductive promises was the gift of extended life, offering mortals the chance to transcend their natural span and walk through the ages like the immortal elves. To those who faced the inevitability of death, this seemed like the greatest blessing imaginable. Centuries or even millennia to accomplish their goals, to see their works come to fruition, to witness the unfolding of history itself. Yet like all of the ring's gifts, this longevity came with a price that made the blessing into a curse. Gollum lived for centuries beneath the mountains, but his extended existence was a mockery of true life. His body became twisted and corrupted, his mind fractured by isolation and obsession, his spirit trapped in an endless cycle of desire and self-loathing. He was neither fully alive nor mercifully dead, sustained by the ring's power but slowly consumed by it, becoming more wretched with each passing year. Even Bilbo, who used the ring sparingly and with relatively innocent intent, began to feel its effects after decades of possession. He grew thin and stretched, as if his life force was being slowly drained away to feed the ring's hunger. The weight of years pressed upon his spirit, even as his body remained youthful, creating a fundamental discord between his physical appearance and his spiritual state. The 9 kings of men discovered the ultimate expression of this cursed immortality. Their lives were extended indefinitely, but they faded from the physical world entirely, becoming wraiths bound to Sauron's will for all eternity. They possessed neither the peace of death nor the joy of life, existing in an endless twilight of service to their master. For the ring did not grant true life, it merely postponed death while slowly stealing away everything that made existence worthwhile. It offered immortality, but at the cost of humanity itself, trapping its victims in a state of eternal hunger that could never be satisfied. The promise of endless tomorrows became a sentence of endless emptiness, stretching into a future without hope or release. Yet perhaps no power of the ring was more universally effective than its ability to awaken desire in all who beheld it. This was not mere greed or covetousness, but a magical compulsion that reached into the deepest parts of the soul and kindled an obsession that could never be fully satisfied. The ring called to kings and beggars alike, whispering promises tailored to their individual weaknesses and dreams. Isildur, standing victorious in the fires of Mount Doom with the power to end Sauron forever, found himself unable to cast the ring into the lava. In that moment of ultimate triumph, the ring's seduction proved stronger than his will, stronger than his duty, stronger than his love for the people he had fought to save. He claimed it as his own, setting in motion centuries of war and suffering. Boromir, noble son of Gondor, felt the ring's pull like a fever in his blood. It showed him visions of himself wielding its power to save his beloved city, to drive back the darkness and restore his father's kingdom to its former glory. The ring transformed his genuine love for his people into a desperate hunger for the power to protect them, regardless of the cost. Even Faramir, who possessed the strength to resist where his brother could not, felt the ring's allure like a weight upon his spirit. Sam, most humble of hobbits, found himself momentarily envisioning a world remade according to his simple gardener's dreams, with all of Mordor transformed into a vast garden under his benevolent rule. The ring's seduction was perfect in its cruelty, for it used the bearer's own goodness against them. It did not tempt them with obvious evil, but with the promise of achieving their most cherished goals through its power. It made them believe that they alone possessed the wisdom and strength to wield it responsibly, that they alone could resist its corruption while using its gifts for righteous purposes. And in believing this lie, they took the first step toward becoming everything they had once opposed. When worn, the One Ring did more than simply render its bearer invisible. It transported them partially into the Wraith world, that shadow realm that exists alongside our own physical reality. This was not a place of gentle spirits or peaceful rest, but a domain of darkness, where the servants of evil held dominion and the natural laws of the living world held little sway. In this shadow realm, the familiar world became strange and threatening. Colors drained away, leaving everything in shades of grey and black. Sounds became muffled and distorted, while new and terrible noises emerged from the darkness. The hunting cries of the Nazgul, the whispers of ancient evils, the distant voice of Sauron himself, calling across the void. The very air grew thin and cold, as if the bearer was slowly suffocating in an atmosphere not meant for living lungs. Frodo experienced this horror most fully on Weathertop, when he donned the ring in desperation to escape the Black Riders. Instead of finding safety, he found himself more vulnerable than ever, visible to the Nazgul in their true, terrible forms, while being unable to fully interact with the physical world around him. He was trapped between realms, belonging fully to neither, a living being slowly being drawn into the domain of the dead. The Shadow Realm was Sauron's hunting ground, the place where his power was strongest and his sight most keen. Every moment spent within it brought the bearer closer to his attention, like a beacon calling out across the darkness. The longer one remained in that grey twilight, the harder it became to return to the world of the living, until finally, like the Nine, they would fade entirely into shadow and become servants of the Dark Lord. This was the ring's cruelest deception, power, promising escape while actually delivering the bearer directly into their enemies' hands, offering concealment while actually providing perfect visibility to those who serve the darkness. Every use of the One Ring, no matter how brief or seemingly innocent, strengthened the bond between its bearer and its true master. The ring was not merely connected to Sauron. It was a part of him, containing a fragment of his very essence, and through it he could see and influence all who dared to wield its power. This connection worked both ways, drawing the Dark Lord's attention while simultaneously making the bearer more susceptible to his will. When Frodo first put on the ring in the prancing pony, far from Mordor and its dangers, Sauron immediately became aware of its presence. The eye turned its gaze toward the west, searching for the source of that familiar sensation, like a predator catching the scent of prey on the wind. Each subsequent use of the ring made this connection stronger, until by the end of their journey, Sauron could track Frodo's movements and even influence his thoughts from across vast distances. The more powerful the bearer, the stronger this bond became. Had Gandalf or Galadriel claimed the ring, their enhanced abilities would have made them like bright stars in Sauron's vision, impossible to hide and constantly vulnerable to his corruption. The very power that would have made them mighty would also have made them the perfect conduits for his will, allowing him to work through them to corrupt and control all of Middle-earth. This bond was also the source of the ring's ultimate treachery. It would grant its bearer great power, making them feel invincible and wise, while simultaneously ensuring that they could never truly escape Sauron's influence. Every decision made while under the ring's sway would serve the Dark Lord's purposes. Every victory achieved through its power would ultimately strengthen his position. The ring was not a weapon that could be turned against its creator. It was a leash designed to draw its victims ever closer to the Master's throne, until they knelt before him willingly, grateful for the opportunity to serve. The One Ring's corruption extended far beyond individual bearers to encompass entire civilizations, serving as an instrument of political and cultural destruction that could topple kingdoms and bring ruin to the mightiest of realms. Throughout the ages of Middle-earth, wherever the ring's influence was felt, great nations fell and noble lineages came to ignoble ends. The first and perhaps greatest of these tragedies was the fall of Numenor, the mighty island kingdom of men. Though the ring did not directly cause their downfall, Sauron's presence among them, made possible by his mastery of domination and corruption perfected in the ring's creation, led to their total destruction. The Númenóreans' pride and desire for immortality made them perfect targets for the same seductive powers that the ring would later wield, and their civilization vanished beneath the waves as divine punishment for their corruption. In Gondor, the ring's influence proved equally devastating. Isildur's failure to destroy it when he had the chance established a pattern of weakness and moral compromise that would plague the kingdom for millennia. The nobility became obsessed with lineage and ancient glory rather than present duty, their strength slowly ebbing as they focused more on past achievements than future challenges. The ring had shown them a vision of power without responsibility, of dominion without service, and this vision corrupted their understanding of true kingship. Even realms that never possessed the ring directly felt its malignant influence. The desire for power that it represented and amplified spread like a plague among the rulers of men, leading to wars of conquest, betrayals of ancient alliances, and the gradual weakening of all the free peoples. Kings who should have stood unite, against the growing darkness instead, turned upon each other, each believing that they alone possessed the wisdom and strength to rule over their neighbors. The ring was not merely Sauron's personal weapon, but his instrument for unmaking the entire political order of Middle-earth, preparing the way for his return by ensuring that no single kingdom would be strong enough to stand against him alone. At the apex of all the ring's dark powers stood its ultimate promise, the ability to become a Dark Lord in one's own right, to claim dominion over Middle-earth itself and rule as Sauron had once dreamed of ruling. This was the final temptation, the supreme lie that the ring whispered to those strong enough to resist its lesser snares. For those who would not be swayed by invisibility or extended life, it offered nothing less than godhood itself. The ring showed potential bearers visions of themselves enthroned in glory, commanding vast armies, reshaping the world according to their will. It promised them the power to end all wars by conquering all nations, to eliminate suffering by eliminating freedom, to create perfect order by destroying all who would oppose them. To those who genuinely desired to do good, it offered the ultimate shortcut. Why struggle to persuade and inspire when you could simply command and be obeyed? Gandalf saw himself as a benevolent dictator, using the ring's power to force peace upon Middle-earth, compelling all its peoples to live in harmony whether they wished to or not. His wisdom would become law, his judgment would be final, and his vision of the good would be imposed upon all without question or appeal. The free peoples would be free no longer, but they would be safe and prosperous under his enlightened tyranny. Galadriel envisioned herself as a queen, beautiful and terrible, ruling from a throne of crystal and starlight, her realm expanding until all of Middle-earth lay beneath her benevolent shadow. She would be loved and feared in equal measure, a goddess walking among mortals, her slightest wise, becoming reality through the power of the ring. Yet this was the ring's greatest deception, for no bearer could truly master it while Sauron endured. It was designed to serve only one master, and all who claimed it would ultimately find themselves serving him, their apparent independence nothing more than an illusion crafted to make their submission more complete. The ring offered the power of a Dark Lord, but only as a stepping stone to becoming Sauron's most willing and effective servant. And so we come to the end of our dark journey, to the moment when fire claimed fire, and the One Ring was unmade in the flames of its birth. In that instant of destruction, all of Sauron's carefully crafted powers crumbled into ash and shadow, their malignant influence finally purged from the world. The eye that had gazed across Middle-earth with such terrible hunger collapsed inward upon itself. The tower that had cast its shadow over the free peoples fell into ruin, and the armies of darkness fled in terror as their master's power was broken forever. But the ring's destruction brought about more than just the defeat of evil. It marked the end of an age, the fading of much that was magical and wonderful from the world. The elves began their final journey into the west, taking with them songs and stories that would never again grace mortal ears. The Ents withdrew deeper into their forests, becoming legends whispered around distant campfires. The very air seemed to grow thinner, less charged with possibility, as if the world itself had grown older and more mundane in a single moment. The powers we have explored tonight, invisibility, domination, amplification, corruption, all of these vanished with their source, but their echoes remain. In every tale of power corrupting those who wield it, in every story of good intentions twisted into tyranny, in every warning about the price of shortcuts to greatness, we hear the whisper of the ring's legacy. For though the golden band is gone, the truths it embodied about the nature of power and the weakness of mortal hearts remain as relevant as ever. The ring showed us that the greatest evil often wears the mask of good, that the most dangerous corruption comes not from obvious vice, but from virtues taken to extremes. It taught us that power over others is ultimately a prison for the one who wields it, that dominion brings not freedom, but slavery to one's own darker nature. These lessons burn as bright as the fires of Mount Doom, illuminating the shadows of our own world with their eternal light. And so the golden band was unmade, melted back into the primordial fire from which it came. But the shadow of its story will haunt the hearts of men forever. A reminder that in the struggle between good and evil, our greatest enemy is often the darkness that dwells within ourselves, waiting for the right moment to whisper its seductive promises of power without consequence, of dominion without responsibility, of victory without sacrifice. The One Ring is destroyed, but its warnings echo still across the ages, as relevant in our time as they were in the elder days, when the world was wider and the darkness had a name. Dear listener, this story ends, but many await. Subscribe so no tale escapes you. Type in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you.